I have repeatedly said that the overwhelming majority of Muslim Americans are outstanding Americans. Yet the first radicalization hearing, which this committee held in March of this year, was met by much mindless hysteria. Countering Islamic radicalization should not be a partisan issue. I would urge my Democratic colleagues to rise above partisan talking points.
Joining us now from Capitol Hill, Republican Congressman from New York and chair of the House Homeland Security Committee, the gentleman you saw in that soundbite, Congressman Peter King. Congressman King, good to see you this morning.
Great to be with you. How's it going?
We're doing okay. So this is your second round of hearings on Muslim radicalization. You did take a lot of heat for that first round. You called that mindless hysteria, the criticism of that. What are you trying to do now with this second round of hearings?
Well, second round was focusing on radicalization within the prison system, and there's no doubt that there is a radicalization of certain Muslim elements in the community. We've had a number of cases where they've gone on from the prison to a post-prison radicalization as well, and then to carry out attempted jihad. But this shouldn't even be debatable, and there's no doubt it's there. We can have a question about the extent of it. We can have a question about how far we should go as far as dealing with it. But when I see critics coming up like CARE and other groups attacking me for holding these hearings, I would be derelict if I didn't have these hearings. I mean, the Department of Homeland Security is setting up a task force to deal with radicalization. The witnesses we had yesterday, one was the commanding officer of counterterrorism in the LAPD. We had a former assistant U.S. attorney who prosecuted a radicalization case. We had the former inspector general of the New York State Department of Correctional Services. This is a real issue. It's there. It's something to be concerned about. And I just found, going back to the first hearing, when you had those vacuous morons of the New York Times attacking me, ending in 4 editorials and 2 front-page stories, and you had the Council on American Relations, you had the media going apoplectic, and the fact is, I will stand by every word that came out of that hearing. They were fair, they were incisive, and they're absolutely necessary. As chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, I have no alternative. I'm not going to back down to political correctness.
Hey, Congressman, I anticipate that you'll probably be hearing again from those vacuous morons at the New York Times, as you described them, on the editorial page about this. But what led you, what events or anecdotal evidence led you to have these hearings on prisons?
Oh, on the prisons. Well, that is from talking to people in law enforcement, in the correctional system. This, to me, should be the most non-controversial of all. Versus any prison official you talk to. In this case, we had the officials there. We had the former Inspector General of the New York State Correctional Services. We had the commanding officer of the LAPD dealing with counterterrorism, describing how vital it is that we stop this radicalization. And part of the problem is that there is no way of vetting. There's no really systematic way, at the state level at least, of vetting who Muslim chaplains are going to be. Several years ago in New York, 2 or 3 years ago, there was a chaplain was found guilty for bringing in razor blades, smuggling in razor blades to prisoners at Rikers Island. Now, here's a chaplain bringing in the razor blades. Then we checked his record, found out he had a conviction for murder. He was a convicted murderer, and yet he was working as a chaplain in the New York prison system. It's hard to find a group that can vet. One of the vetting groups was actually on Long Island, and many of the people in it have been involved in extremely radical activities themselves. Now, let me just preface all of this by saying, over the years, Islam has been a tremendous cure in prison for many people. Many young men, especially African-American men, have turned their lives around by being converted to Islam. Right. So it's not the conversion to Islam, it's the radical type of Islam that's being carried out.
All right, but Peter, devil's advocate here. What about, Latin gangs in prison and the Mexican drug trade? Are you going to have hearings on that issue?
No, and I'll tell you why. My committee is set up for Homeland Security. I'm dealing with groups that have affiliations overseas who are involved in terrorist activities. The Latin gangs, all of those gangs we're talking about, are extremely dangerous. That would come primarily, though, under the Judiciary Committee. My committee was set up after September 11th to deal with international terrorism and with terrorism, and that's why I'm focusing on that. But also, even with that, Mike, right now we have obviously gang programs in prison, and then when people in gangs leave prison, they're monitored and followed. We don't have a similar program when it comes to radical Islamists because of the political sensitivities. They're not followed the way they should, the way, for instance, remember the Crips or the Bloods would be. But no, those gangs are horrible. They're terrible. But again, they are carrying out gang warfare against their own. They're carrying out in communities, and people who are killed by them are just as dead as anyone killed by a terrorist. But the fact is, the terrorist groups are capable of much more violence, and also they're dealing with an international foe.
Congressman Donnie Deutsch, and I'd love to disagree with you. Of course, I'm an evolving liberal, but I'm for profiling. I mean, if I was running a police force and the suspected murderer was Asian, I'd be stopping Asians in their cars and not everybody else. I want to actually help you out here with your image. I want to help you out with basically. Why are you laughing? I'm saying it's just basic. It's business.
No, he appreciates that.
I want to
such a helper.
No, I want to give you a set of words. We're going to work on image because I don't want the New York Times coming after you. I don't want these vacuous groups coming after you. You should. I'd love to give you a set of words that dispels is your talking points that no, we're going after Muslims. This is an indictment on the Muslim religion. Now, the word radical doesn't do enough. I wish there was a set of words I could give you. Hey, we're talking about the 1 in a million. Something that, to me as an American, because I agree with what you're doing, but that from a communications point does not feel like the indictment on the entire Muslim world. Is there a set of words? Is there a set of talking points you can always start out your cause with that might stop some of this craziness against you, for lack of better words?
Yeah, I don't know, Donnie. I mean, the reason I smile is I never thought of myself as having much of an image to begin with. Never mind me making one I have. But no, I mean, I always say 99% of Muslims, the overwhelming majority of Muslim Americans, are outstanding Americans. I don't know.
Well, when you say that, it's interesting. You kind of almost said that as a throwaway. You know, of course, 99. I think if there was more conviction with that, maybe you would be able to kind of fight this fight without some of the. John, what are you giggling at? This is
I'm
very
giggling.
I mean, you giggle. I mean, that was a giggle.
But if I can say,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now, if I can say something like that, my record, probably nobody in Congress prior to September 11th had a more pro-Muslim record. Now, when Joe was in Congress, I'm sure he voted against sending troops to Bosnia and Kosovo. I think, one of only 2 Republicans who supported that, because I thought there was genocide being carried out by Orthodox Christians against Muslims in Bosnia and Kosovo. I was one of the only members of Congress to visit there. I stood by the Muslim community. I went to mosques. I was in their homes. I went to their weddings. And it was only after September 11th when I saw top Muslims I knew, top Muslim Americans, saying the Jews attacked the World Trade Center, the CIA and the FBI. And then as I followed after that, I saw that there was leaders in the Muslim community who were not speaking out enough. And it's not just me. I mean, Dennis McDonough, who was the #2 man in the National Security Council, the Deputy National Security Advisor, gave a speech the week before my hearing in March where he said Al-Qaeda is targeting the Muslim American community. He specifically said that, and the Muslim community has to reject that. And that's my position. So I don't know what I could do to turn around the editors of the New York Times, and plus I like them being on the other side. Believe me, it doesn't bother me. They actually wrote an editorial about me last week praising me, and I haven't slept since.
I read that.
Congressman, before we let you go, what's the outcome of these hearings? We get beyond all the op-eds and the headlines. How are we made safer by having these hearings? What changes in the country?
Yeah, for instance, as a result of yesterday's hearing, I think we have to come up with at least guidelines for how we vet Muslim chaplains, to show, what requirements they have to have before they can actually serve as a chaplain in the prison. That's number one. Number 2 is to set up a way which does not violate religious freedom to be able to target someone in prison who we believe has become a jihadist, not converted to Islam, because the more Muslim converts we have, the better, because that has changed so many lives. But I think the more we can show those who we believe have been radicalized and find a way to follow them when they leave prison, or provide some post-prison remedies for them, because now many of them go right into post-prison more radicalization programs.
All right, Congressman, good luck with those vacuous morons. You'll be hearing from them tomorrow.
Where was Scarborough? He's hiding in Chicago. I'm coming after him, and he's hiding on me,
He refused to appear with you.
He's probably trying to find a pair of shoes.
I knew you were going there, Congressman. You've so insulted him that he's now hiding in shame. Congressman Peter King, thanks so much. We'll talk to you.
Great.
We should point